Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday evening to you all. Hope you folks are doing well out there tonight and had yourselves a fantastic day. And I hope everyone has been having a great week out there so far. Here to bring you some information about what's to come over the next few days and to the next several days, really, all the way into next week, as I do think things are going to wake up potentially big time across the central U.S., especially as we get into maybe this weekend into early next week. So we're going to take an extended look out. I know I mentioned a lot. I don't like to get too far out in advance just because things change so much. Got burned big time back in the winter. I was highly confident on a pattern change. As you guys remember, that's been tuned in since the winter, and the rug got pulled out from under all of us that was hoping for a little bit of snow, especially for our folks in the south. But not speaking of snow, speaking of severe weather. So we are going to take a peek into about 7 days out. And I'm going to talk about why I'm pretty confident we're going to enter a pretty active pattern. So we'll speak on everything leading up to that too. So the next few days, the video will be time stamped out pretty well. We'll speak on tomorrow or Wednesday, Thursday, a little bit into our Friday, and kind of everything in between before we make our way into like this weekend and next week's forecast potential. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. Prayer is powerful, and it's a fantastic way to glorify God. So we all look out for one another on this channel, so definitely put those prayer requests, even if they're unspoken, put them down in the comments. Let's get rocking and rolling. So what you're looking at is the water vapor loop. For the people who's been viewing for some time now, know that I show this occasionally, not as much as I used to, but we're going to kind of draw all the pieces of the puzzle out there right now currently, and then we'll talk about how some of these pieces could lead in to what drives our weather over the next few days. So let's talk about what's going on right now. So let's work our way, I would say, east to west. Got a lot of action. I'm just going to probably draw a lot of check marks on here where there is action, just energy in the atmosphere. Got a lot of energy over here in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. This is going to move, if it hasn't already, into areas of like Florida, where we are going to have the chance for some strong to severe storms overnight, and really getting into tomorrow afternoon, where there already is a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather for areas of Florida for tomorrow. We got energy. You can't really see it very well, and I should mention this. The whiter colors on your screen indicate more moisture in the atmosphere. The more doled out colors like the grays and the blacks indicates more drier air in the atmosphere. So just keep that in mind as I'm talking here. There is storms, especially up here in the PD of South Carolina, into the eastern sections of North Carolina, the surging, and they do have some rotation with them. We've already had some pictures from, one of my friends, Gerald. He's under one of my recommended channels. He's a good friend of mine. He's actually chasing out in this region. He's already gotten a wall cloud and some rotation with some of these storms. So these are some sneaky storms. And then we're watching for some storms trying to develop in Georgia. And then you check out this gnarly looking spin right here. And we talked about this in this morning's video. This has storms firing here in areas of Tennessee, Kentucky, and just wrapping around this pretty much this area of low pressure right here with surface low basically associated with this upper area of lower pressure, if that makes any sense. And then just kind of widespread convection in this area, just more so rain scattered about. And then we got splotchy sort of rain showers out and snow showers in the higher elevations up here in the Rockies. But mentioning all of this, I want to take this all back off the screen. This is going to be pretty hard to see on your screen. If you notice, if you look towards California, there's a flow kind of going like this, and then a flow sort of wrapping back this way. You can see the movement on your screen. You can't see it way out here in the Pacific, but this flow actually comes and does this. So there's a little bit of a spin, a rotation. That is actually our short wave that eventually is going to make its way across the southwest and eventually the southern plains and bring some pretty active weather over the next 48 hours across the south central U.S. and eventually areas of the deep south, maybe even the southeast into this weekend. So it's hard to see. I think it'll be a little bit better to see on your screen about 24 hours from now as this fully kind of makes its way into California. But this is the big piece of the puzzle we're going to watch that could drive not only a severe weather threat, but a significant flooding risk across areas of the south central and deep south also. So I just want to kind of draw all this on the screen for you just to kind of show you the pieces to the puzzle out there. Now, As far as tomorrow's risk of severe weather, there is a flooding risk for tomorrow. I just don't think it's going to be as significant as our flooding risk for Thursday. But there's a few areas to watch once again for tomorrow. Kind of like there's been a few areas to watch for today. One is a slight risk. Basically, a sweeping line of storms is going to sweep across areas, pretty much all of Florida, especially central Florida, where there's a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. And then there's a level 2 out of 5 risk, a slight risk in the yellow across areas of Oklahoma, all the way to Wichita, Kansas, the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. Marginal risk surrounding it, which is a level 1 out of 5. And speaking of the marginal risk, there it is for the Carolinas. The same energy that you're getting in like Tennessee, Kentucky, surrounding states right now, this same energy is going to pivot through the Carolinas tomorrow. We're going to have another threat of strong to severe storms, kind of like what we're getting right now for tomorrow afternoon and evening. So we'll speak a little bit on that. So what is this driven off of? And it hit me after I dropped the video this morning that I forgot to show you the outlooks here per the Storm Prediction Center, but we're not going to forget this time. There's a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location from Tampa to Orlando, Melbourne. You guys in the brown, 5% risk. And then a 2% risk in the green areas. Okay, wind threat. I'm kind of surprised there's not a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour down here, but only a 5% up here, and then a 15% risk across areas of Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas, as you see here. Hail threat. There is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. I feel like they got that flip-flop for this, but like I said, I'm not an expert. These are the experts per the Storm Prediction Center, but I do think they'll upgrade it to a 15% risk of winds exceeding that 55 to 60 miles per hour. But we do have that risk of hail, and really what this is driven off of is a cold front. Not really our southern shortwave that's going to make its way into southwestern U.S., but a cold front will provide lift for thunderstorms, and this is just leftover energy from this area of lower pressure over here. So let's break down each individual region. Not going to spend a ton of time on this. We'll just kind of go right into it and look at the HRRR model. So tomorrow morning, waking up to pretty quiet conditions across the southern plains. As we start to get to about 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., start to see some storms across areas of the panhandle of Texas, southwestern Oklahoma. Starting to creep into the picture here. By the time we're at 8 p.m., some storms up here near Woodward, sort of the border and just points south, especially of Kansas and Oklahoma. Some storms creeping close to Dodge City. I'm sorry, Dodge City over here. But yeah, same case. Wichita is what I meant to say. Storms moving into southwestern Kansas. And they'll sort of dance around. They're not going to be very discreet. It's not going to be, I would say, a huge severe weather event by any means for southern Kansas and Oklahoma and areas of Texas. But this is what potentially the radar could look like around 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Some storms definitely in the southern counties of Kansas, scattered range across Oklahoma. And then I do think as we're getting into after midnight tomorrow night, some stormy conditions from Oklahoma City to Tulsa all the way up into maybe Kansas City. And eventually all this energy will drift into like Springfield, Missouri as we're getting into the wee hours of the morning. Not tomorrow morning, but for Thursday morning, we still got lingering showers and storms down here around and just south of the Oklahoma City region. And waking up Thursday morning. Don't need to get my days mixed up here to probably some heavy rain. Not tomorrow morning, but Thursday morning. So, I wouldn't be really concerned about a tornado threat here, but there's a 2% risk. So that's potentially what the radar could look like tomorrow. For these areas, like I said, not overly concerned. Now, Florida, this could be certainly a tricky setup. I think as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we already going to have ongoing severe alerts, severe thunderstorm warnings, maybe even tornado warnings. I do think we'll have to watch out for this convection. It'll be ongoing just south of the main feeder line of energy up here. And by the way, in Florida, it is hot right now in the southern half of the peninsula of Florida. Heat indices are well into the hundreds. I was checking that out earlier. You're deep into summer already down here. But taking it to about midday tomorrow, look at these storms. I'm telling you, on the southern flank of these storms, you want to watch out for a tornado threat. Tampa Bay, at this point, over to Orlando, Disney World area. You guys, if you're vacationing down here, you're getting hit pretty good with storms. But as they move through, it'll take a few hours for them to eventually cruise through. I think by the time you get later in the afternoon, Orlando, it might be done. Same thing with Tampa Bay. But these storms look pretty intense as they kind of cruise south of Tampa Bay down to Fort Myers, Space Coast, eastern side also. Will they lose some steam, and we'll take it all the way to about 10 p.m.? Looks like they potentially lose some steam by the time they get into southern Florida, but we'll watch out for this for sure. This could drop a lot of rain in Florida too. I don't think that's going to be a huge concern, but look at the updraft velocity swath. There's going to be some stronger updrafts indicating some rotating updrafts. That's why you do have that 5% risk of a tornado. So if we take this all the way through the event tomorrow, we'll just take it all the way to Thursday morning. I mean, there's pockets here showing up from North Florida all the way to Central Florida for rotating updrafts and stronger updrafts capable of producing hail. We're going to probably have some hail with these storms tomorrow, and certainly can't rule out a damaging wind gust or two. Definitely watch out the Bahamas, rotating thunderstorms north of the Bahamas. So want to be keep your eye out on that. But you see some rotation with these storms around Tampa bound down to Fort Myers over to Orlando. Definitely a possibility of some rotating thunderstorms with this. And then we got to watch the Carolinas. Will this upgrade to a slight risk? Today's did, and it's going to be the same thing. I would not be surprised if we wake up tomorrow morning, we got a slight risk in the Carolinas. But waking up tomorrow morning, I will say tonight, there's a shot of some isolated strong to severe storms across South Carolina especially. But as we start to make our way into tomorrow morning, already some stronger storms showing up between Columbia and Florence down to Orangeburg. Potentially, look at these storms riding up just after lunchtime near Fayetteville, the PD of South Carolina. And then we get just isolated to scattered storms, strong. The potential will be there for a quick spin up. Definitely a risk of hail with these storms. We've already kind of seen some videos today of what's happening, just to the west of these areas. I think that these storms could produce a lot of very small hail, not huge hail, but very small. Just be aware of this. This is potentially what the radar could look like around, 4 p.m. tomorrow. Some storms showing up around the southeast coastline of North Carolina, Fayetteville, western North Carolina, and isolated storms everywhere else. Can't rule out storms all the way down to Atlanta. That doesn't even sound like Orlando. Down to Atlanta. I love mixing some words up, guys. And then we start to get into tomorrow, late afternoon, the evening hours, just scattered storms everywhere from Columbia down to Augusta up to Charlotte, Raleigh, to Myrtle Beach, Charleston. Everybody's going to have the potential here. So I definitely think a stormy evening is on tap for tomorrow evening. And some people are already getting a stormy evening this evening. And then this will kind of peter out and it'll be done by the time you get into Thursday morning. But certainly, scattered and, scattered showers and storms. You look at the updraft velocity swath from this weird looking area right here is from a storm trying to show up later this evening. It goes right over my house. So definitely want to watch out for any crazy storms that move out of Georgia this evening in this area. But you see these little splotches everywhere. This is what's being depicted by those storms tomorrow. So just do want to watch out for some weak rotation, some stronger updrafts capable of producing some hail also with these storms tomorrow in the Carolinas. So what comes after this, right? This is really going to be honing in on Thursday, Friday, and even Saturday. Okay, this is the area, this blue area that's lower pressure, right? Orange area, that's higher pressure. Okay, typically lower pressure is associated with stormier, more active conditions. Normally, once all that pulls through, you get some sort of cold front associated with an area of low pressure. So this is pulling out. This is what's going to drive the weather tonight into tomorrow, all the way potentially into Thursday morning. But you see this other area that gets introduced into the picture. That is what this is right here. You barely can even tell it's there. You will tell a lot more as we're waking up tomorrow morning. But that is this once we get about 36 hours out. So this shortwave trough basically is yanking in ingredients on the southeast and eastern flank of this area of lower pressure. So you got flow that kind of moves around lower pressure. This is a better example of it. Like the flow around this lower pressure is going like this. Okay, and let's get this off pink. Let's go back to black. So that's the way the flow is going around lower pressure. So of course, you got a flow coming down like this and going like this. So this is bringing in that right higher low-level moisture, higher dew points is what I'm trying to say. You also probably have some sort of just energy. As you can tell, there's a little ripples in the isobars right into here. So you're probably just going to have lift in the atmosphere, some thunderstorm development. What kind of wind shear do you have? What kind of kinematics, wind flow aloft? We still need to kind of figure that one out. But that is your risk of severe, what's going to drive your risk of severe weather for Thursday. All right. So we take a look at that. There's Thursday's severe weather risk. Okay. Now let's just cover all the bases with this first. And then we get into Friday. Same deal, right? Still got this area blue here. This shortwave trough, upper trough, low area of low pressure, whatever you want to call it, it's still doing the same thing, guys. Still bringing in some low-level moisture into this region. That flow at the base of this trough, still pretty much pumping in that low-level moisture. You want to watch what this does too up here, like in this area. Want to watch that. But let's just focus on this right now. But you still got it around, as we're getting into Friday, which you already have a slight risk for Friday for day 4. And then we get into our Saturday. We'll stop it here, and then we'll reconnect with this here in a second. But we still got this area of white and blue, so there's still lower pressure here. There's some sort of upper energy still in place. So I do think we're going to have some unsettled weather around for the southeast for Saturday because of this kind of 3-day event. So this will be the 3rd day for the southeast. So you go back and you look at the Storm Prediction Center on all those 3 days I just mentioned, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And of course for Thursday, they already have a slight risk up. All right, level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather right in the heart of Texas. We do have another area right here to watch for. We'll speak on that when we get a little bit closer. But, what is this driven off of? Well, at day 3, all we know is the probability odds. So we just know, hey, in the yellow, there's a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in a given location. And in the black outline region here, which basically cuts the 15% risk area in half to the west, you also have a 10% risk of significant severe weather. What is that going to be? Well, most likely it'll be for hail, but of course we don't know for sure, but it'll most likely be for large hail. This is driven off the shortwave trough, the area of low pressure. The day before it is not, okay? This is. So this is day 1. The concern with this also is because you've already received a ton of rain. You're not going to get 10 inches of rain in this area, but because you've already seen a lot of rain, this could be a growing concern. It already is. For day 3, the day 3 excessive rainfall outlook kind of works the same way as the Storm Prediction Center outlook, but this is the excessive rainfall outlook. Already has a red area right here, which means a moderate risk, at least a 40% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in any given location. So the flooding threat in eastern, southeastern Texas into Louisiana is a real deal as we're getting into our Thursday. So if you're tuning in from that area, of course you've received a lot of rain because you live there, but be mindful of this as you're going to have just rounds of thunderstorms move over this area. Slight risk surrounding it, 15% chance in this area. And what we do know is we're not really in great range of some of the better short-range model guides. You guys know that's been tuning in for a while. I'm not a big fan of the NAM, but I'm going to show you what the NAM looks like starting Thursday morning because it does go out 60 hours. And here it comes. Already has, oh man, don't sneeze. Okay, we're good. Already shows a lot of heavy rain, shower, and storm activity along the Red River here, Texas, Oklahoma. But look, as you start to get into Thursday afternoon, a lot of storm activity in northern Texas. And then this really just congeals into a lot of storminess, basically to sum it up, from western Texas through northern Texas. Look at this nasty sweeping line of storms moving across areas in northern Texas. But this could look much different than this. But the concern for flash flooding certainly could potentially unfold a little bit later Thursday into Thursday night. And, you go all the way out to, the middle of the night, Thursday night. And you just got heavy rain, showers, storms. I mean, this rain could, dump 2-3 inches of rain per hour. So it's certainly a concern, and we certainly can look at, let's look at Louisiana and what this shows for this region. Same thing, based off the NAM, it shows most of the action for Thursday not entering southern Arkansas, Louisiana, until after the sun sets Thursday night. But when it does start raining, it's going to be very heavy. This is as far as I can go. This is 1 a.m. Friday morning. So it could look much different than this. This is just all we have to look at as of right now. But the Weather Prediction Center, this is how much rain, and I'm looking at this because it goes further out. It's pretty much the same as the National Weather Service. It's between now and Saturday morning. Right now, they like this area here in Texas to have a pocket of about 3 to 4, maybe as much as 5 inches of rain here in southeastern Texas. More so in central Texas, 1 to 2, 2.5 inches. Go to our friends here in Louisiana. I mean, you're pushing 4 to 5 inches, especially right here in the heart of Louisiana. Lake Charles, Alexandria. This area right in here is going to get the most rain. But, you can't ignore the southern half of Mississippi, too. Few to several inches of rain is possible in these areas. But this is right where your moderate risk is. This is a concern, guys. We just need to be aware of this for sure. I think that this has an opportunity to go to a high risk if the models increase as far as what they're thinking with rainfall in this region. So there is a slight risk for Friday. So there's basically a 15% risk at day 4 or Friday, May the 17th, into the morning of May the 18th. A 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in the given location. We don't know what this event will end up like. What I am confident is you're not going to have really good thermodynamics getting very far north. So I do think most of the severe weather, maybe Friday into Saturday, will be confined to areas further south. It depends on what this area of lower pressure does. If it sort of drifts, like for example, if this area sort of drifts a little bit further north, like up in here, you see this blue area a little bit north than it is right here, then you're going to have better low-level moisture that surges further north. If it kind of does what it's doing here, it's probably going to be confined more to the Gulf coastline, northern Florida, southern Georgia. We'll see what happens, though. A lot can change. So we got that. So after we've mentioned all of that, there is a lot of chatter about us entering a pretty active pattern as we are starting to get into the later half of May. And later half of May, some people consider the criteria in the month breaking it up. I always say early month, mid-month, and late month. And to me, when you get into the 20s of any month, date-wise, you're starting to get into the later portion of the month. And sure enough, it does look like things are going to get very active. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at the European model and kind of go back to what we've been looking at. So we'll kind of start off where we left off, right? I do want to watch this upper trough up here that's just really anchored to the north. This could bring something for the upper portion of the country. I think something's going to happen with this energy up here, this lower pressure in general. So we'll watch that. Not sure what's going to happen. But this will finally head on out, kind of diminish. I would say it won't diminish. I want to watch what this does Sunday afternoon. I don't think this is going to bring severe weather really to the Carolinas, except maybe just some wraparound flow. But you want to watch this lower pressure as it gets off the coast of the southeast. Okay? Then, kind of your third shortwave trough enters the picture. Here's this upper low down here off the coast of California. At the same time, you got a trough digging down to the western U.S. You got ridging kind of building over the southern tier of the country all the way into the northeast. This is going to bring probably warmer than average temperatures across a good chunk of the country. But a big trough digs. And if you're wondering what a trough is, just when you see the blue on your screen, that's a trough of low pressures. Think of lower pressures. Think of unsettled weather. So this is getting into Monday evening, right? At this point, you got a big trough over the west, and you're starting to get that southwesterly flow going through this region. Typically, when we're looking at this, guys, the area of white between the orange and the blue that you see on what we call the 500 millibar chart here is where you're going to have your weather. That's where your boundary between more stable areas and more unstable areas. I would say it's where your lower pressure is going against your higher pressure, which is typically where you have your unstable air. And if you'll notice in these areas, you're going to have little ripples in these little lines. That's energy in the atmosphere, kind of situated between two clashing air masses. So Monday, what I'm trying to say is you're probably going to have energy in between this area, probably ejecting across the plains. Are you going to have some sort of severe weather threat right here across the plains? There's a potential for that. Don't want to get too hung up on that. All right. And then we start to get into Tuesday evening of next week. I mean, we're all the way out to May 21st. Okay, OOZ Wednesday is pretty much Tuesday evening of next week. Zulu time, it gets kind of weird. So huge trough over here. And basically what you got going on is you got energy right into here, right? Directly associated under this upper low. But you also have basically upper energy rounding this trough like this. And this is basically creating a flow out the southwest that's going around this area in blue, this area in lower pressure. So you basically got areas of energy, surface lows, upper energy, whatever it may be, kind of riding down the base of this trough, the southeastern flank and the eastern flank of this trough. So what does these little areas of energy do right in here, right? Well, each area of energy brings lift in the atmosphere. Each area of energy helps to bring a southerly flow, which brings more kind of its own warm front, if you will. It brings an ejection of low-level moist air further north. And they also bring, each surface low brings its own kinematic field, meaning its own like mid-low-level jet, like low-level jet. So you just got to watch. What we're watching for here basically is impulses of energy riding through this area right here, more so right through here. And as long as you got this thing sitting here like this, you're going to continue to have waves of energy. So, you start to get, and we're getting kind of far out now. We're getting past 7 days. You still got this area blue out here with embedded energy flying through. And then eventually, maybe sometime next week, you get a full ejection of this entire upper trough. And then that's when you could have a bigger severe weather threat as we're getting into Thursday and Friday of next week, maybe. Okay? So trough drops down, phases with this southern energy, northern energy phase together, creates this huge amplified trough over the western U.S. To summarize this, energy starts to flow with this southwesterly flow at the base and the east-southeastern side of this trough. You got a ridge building into this region, creating more stable conditions, probably quieter weather, above average temperatures with a lot of energy riding through here. And as this area of blue continues to move eastward, the track of all this energy will continue to move eastward. So now it's going like this as opposed to maybe like that. And eventually it could start going like this. I hope that makes sense. So now that you see the nerdy version of this, this is the 500 millibar wind speeds as far as knots. So what I want you to watch here is watch over here on this side of your screen. So this is getting in a Saturday morning, right? There's that same area that you see right here. Let's back this up a little bit. All right. And this is for what? Sunday evening. So there's your blue right here. There's your blue right here. Each has an associated mid-level jet, basically, right? So Sunday evening, there's your kind of mid-level southerly flow right in here because of this upper trough digging down into western Canada and the northwestern U.S. And then here is the one that's pushing, basically kickstarting that southwesterly flow down to the south off the coast of California. Now watch what happens as these phase. Okay, so this is Monday evening. You got a full phasing of this mid-level jet, if you will. So at this point, it's game on. You see this kind of area of green? It's basically just where you have, we're not going to focus too much on what kind of speed aloft it is. Just look at this area and you see, because this is the European ensemble, fantastic thing to look at in the medium to longer range. Just look at this and say, hey, if you look really closely, you see these arrows pointing to the northeast, and they're coming and swiveling out of this area in the southwestern U.S. That is where your road network, sort of like just your avenue of all your energy is going to travel, okay? You got this ridge building up into this region. You got a trough digging down to this region. Ridge right into here. Trough right into here. And then you see all this flow. This is where all your energy is flowing through, okay? So you call this kinematics, right? That's the nerd weather term of it. Kinematics, that means you got favorable lift in the atmosphere, favorable wind flow aloft for these storms to get going. And this continues. You continue to make your way deeper into next week. You get into, Tuesday. This starts to get a little bit more zonal potentially, but we'll have to watch for that. Energy riding right through the more highlighted colors here in the green. But it very well could be riding this way, a little bit further south. And then you start to get into Wednesday. A lot of energy shooting across this region potentially, creating some form of severe weather. And then, we're getting into La La Land at this point. So, 9 to 10 days out, we don't know what's going to happen. But looks pretty active. Okay, we can go really far out if we want to. And it just looks like you got a consistent flow over the country. Might get zonal eventually, though, as a ridge tries to maybe nudge in the central U.S. But speaking of those ingredients that we talk about a lot, right? To sort of sum this up as far as thermodynamics, surface moisture, your higher dew points, surface temperatures, your cape levels. Let's just look at dew points and your cape levels, and we'll wrap this video up. Saturday afternoon, you already got a lot of moist air across the central and eastern U.S., especially the eastern, southeastern U.S., right? But you keep this moving, right? Little weak cold front moves in, stabilizes parts of the Midwest. But immediately as you start to get into Sunday afternoon, right? And we're not talking about the severe threat at this point from Thursday to Saturday. We're kind of extending this out into the later portion of this coming weekend into next week. But what I want you to notice here is all of a sudden, this coming Sunday, we're getting a pool of low-level moisture all the way up to Nebraska. Dew points are getting into the 60s. And then we start to get into our Monday, and we get basically a surge of ripe, almost tropical moisture all the way into the Midwest. Look at these dew points into the 60s and 70s. You can check that off the box as far as an ingredient for severe weather. So you're thinking, why is this deep moisture getting so far north? Well, it's because of this. All right, this is digging down, and remember the flow. Let's take it all the way there to right here. Remember the flow that's coming out of this region? Every little impulse of energy is helping to aid already with a southwesterly flow, already pulling in that ripe low-level moisture. But each little area of energy basically yanks in a surge of southerly flow here and brings that ripe low-level moisture higher in humidity, thermodynamic-wise, way all the way up here into the Midwest. So you're going to have severe weather potentially here. Okay, and that's why, it's getting pulled so far north. When we start to get into Tuesday evening, this is starting to get into a week out. A lot of moisture pretty far north, right? And it's sort of underlapping. It's underlapping all that basically that wind flow right over, which is overlapping these higher in moisture levels at the surface. So what does that mean? Well, the word overlapping, you have overlapping ingredients. Where you have the best overlapping ingredients, where you're going to have the higher in severe weather threat. And of course, we get into next Wednesday. This is getting pretty far out. A little cold front will probably be associated with this troughing. But, it just sits there and reloads again as we start to get into 9 to 10 days out. And, it's just there. And, the last thing we'll look at is mixed layer cape. All right, this is just one model run, too. This will change. Okay, I'm just kind of showing you the pieces to the puzzle. We start out Sunday afternoon. Look at all this high-end storm energy out here. Cape values reaching over 3,000 joules per kilogram into the middle of the country. Okay, then we start to get into Monday. Look at these cape levels showing up on this run of the Euro. Over 4,000 joules per kilogram mixed layer cape into the Midwest and areas of the plains. That's a lot of fuel in the atmosphere, right? And then we start to get into Wednesday. Still a lot of high-end cape. A lot of storm energy. And then we start to get into Thursday, still there, right? This is next Thursday, and it's still there as we basically round off the rest of the run. Just day after day of storm energy in the atmosphere in the central U.S., okay? And maybe as we start to get to the last few days of May, the pattern might shift, and then we get more of an active pattern maybe for areas east and southeast, as eventually all this lower pressure will probably beat down the ridge. It'll probably be in the eastern U.S., but that's pretty much all I got. I hope that makes sense. Ask questions if you need to, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. But, that was more of an educational video of what's to come. There's a lot of people who's already made videos about this pattern potentially coming up, Convective Chronicles, which is one of the best YouTube sites out there for explaining severe weather. I'm sure, if you're active in the weather community, you probably heard of him. No Hype Guy gets deep into, understanding what's driving it. And then there's a guy that does fantastic. He's the best in the business for the tropics. I've learned a ton from him, and his name is Levi, I believe. And his YouTube site is Tropical Tidbits. I have both of their YouTube channels and my suggested channels and my YouTube page. So check them out if you don't, and I'm not going to take any offense to it. If you need somebody else to try to explain it, they do a fantastic job. They're smarter than me. I've learned a lot from them. But certainly an active pattern coming up, I think, unfortunately. And I know people are getting tired of hearing that. I'm just here to relay the message, guys. But I do think as we wake up tomorrow morning, or maybe the morning after, I think we're going to start to see more 15% risk areas past day 4 for the weekend, maybe all the way into early next week. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a fantastic rest of your night. Talk to you in the morning.